Somebody called the district saying it looks like there's going to be trouble. I was one of those officers dispatched.
The Arizona desert has never been just empty land. For generations it's been a corridor, a crossing point, a graveyard where gun runners, smugglers and outlaws leave their marks in the sand before vanishing into history. For decades, this 1,000-mile stretch between the United States and Mexico remained a quiet crossing ground. Until recently. Until the sound of Harley-Davidson engines tore through that silence like thunder. They arrived from the north. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. The most feared outlaw brotherhood on American soil.
Club, the most feared outlaw biker brotherhood in the world. And from the south, they came armed with military-grade weapons,
armed
backed by the
convoys with
ruthless
military-grade
discipline of the
weapons.
Sinaloa cartel,
Men trained
whose
in
empire
ruthless
stretches
discipline.
from Sonora to
Backed
California.
by the power
Somewhere
of the
between
Sinaloa
those two
cartel,
frontiers,
an
fate
empire
forced them into the
stretching from
same
Sonora all the way to
dust-choked
California.
But before
Somewhere
we can
in that
understand how
dust-choked stretch
300
of
cartel
land,
members
fate
ended up
forced
dead,
these two
we must
forces into the
understand
same
who dared to
space.
meet.
And before we understand how 300 cartel operatives ended up dead, we need to understand who had the courage or the madness to meet them head-on.
That space there was the Polish Women's Home. It was a Polish neighborhood and they would have events there.
And more importantly, why? Let's go back. Back to Cleveland. Back to 1974. That space there was the Polish Women's Home, an investigator recalled years later. It was a Polish neighborhood where they held community events. Someone decided to organize a bike show. Custom motorcycles. Trophy bikes. Just a regular gathering. The footage exists. Grainy. Taken from the A&E documentary Secrets of the Hells Angels. Investigators who worked the scene called it the deadliest biker brawl in American history. A scene drenched in blood and legend. The Polish Women's Hall Massacre. 32 Angels walked into that building outnumbered 8-1 by rival bikers from the Breed Gang. Logic said they shouldn't have survived. But logic doesn't apply to the Angels. When it was over, the Breed Gang was decimated. The hall was soaked in blood. And every single Angel walked out alive. It wasn't a fight. It was a military operation. The Angels had done something most gang members never think to do. They prepositioned themselves. They studied the layout. They planned escape routes. They treated it like war. That same tactic, that same military precision, would define how the Angels approached the border conflict nearly 50 years later. Fast forward to 2023. The Sinaloa cartel began tightening its grip on smuggling routes along Arizona's western corridor. From Lukeville to San Luis Rio, Colorado, a stretch known to traffickers as the Sonoran Gate. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, this region experienced an unprecedented surge. Not just migrants crossing in desperation but tactical convoys. Armed traffickers using the desert as cover, moving with coordination and confidence. Federal reports started noting something unusual. A motorcycle group had begun patrolling sections of private ranch land near Ajo, Arizona. At first, law enforcement thought they were looking at local militias. Ranchers protecting their property. Nothing unusual for Arizona. But intercepted radio chatter told a different story. These weren't weekend warriors. They were organized, disciplined, using call signs that matched those once associated with the Hells Angels Nomads chapter out of California. Why were they there? What brought an outlaw motorcycle club to the border? The answer was personal. The Angels had lost brothers. Not in turf wars or bar fights but to fentanyl overdoses. Their creed, forever forward, had twisted into something darker. Vengeance. The cartel's poison was killing Americans. Killing brothers. Killing families. And that was something the Angels refused to forgive. Reports from the Pima County Sheriff's Department started documenting strange confrontations along State Route 85. Burned vehicles left on the side of the road. Shell casings scattered across the sand. 7.62 NATO rounds military caliber. Entire tracks leading north toward a known biker rest stop near Ajo. Sources cited in the Arizona Republic confirmed sightings of unmarked Harley groups escorting civilian trucks through desert trails. Moving in formation. Tactical convoys. Still, nobody believed they would ever confront a cartel directly. The cartels had armies. The cartels had resources. The cartels owned entire regions of Mexico. But the Angels had something else. Rage, training, and a code that valued vengeance above survival. March 17, 2024. Early morning hours. The night began like any other desert run. A caravan of 12 trucks crossed through an unofficial corridor just outside Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument. These weren't civilian vehicles. Intelligence later linked them to Los Ninis, the enforcement wing of the Sinaloa cartel. They carried weapons designed for war, not crime. Belt-fed M249 machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, night vision drones. This was military-level firepower moving through American soil. Their destination? A safe house near Kasabe, suspected of housing narcotic storage tanks bound for Phoenix distribution networks. But what they didn't know, or perhaps refused to believe, was that the Hells Angels already controlled the northern exit route. An anonymous federal agent later described the encounter to Reuters as the first known instance of a full-scale tactical engagement between an American biker organization and a Mexican cartel. According to CBP's post-incident analysis, the Angels had infiltrated the area days earlier. They weren't reacting. They were waiting. Using old tactical knowledge from the 1970s brawls, they buried weapon caches near natural cover points. A page straight from their Polish Hall playbook. They moved quietly, communicating only via encrypted shortwave radios. Leading the Arizona operation was a man rumored to be Rex Mendes, a Marine Corps veteran. Once expelled from the club for unauthorized actions, but reinstated under mutual cause. Mendes was known for two things: military discipline and an unrelenting hatred for cartels. At 1:14 a.m., the convoy entered the kill zone. Thermal cameras captured muzzle flashes so bright they triggered satellite detection systems. Alerts from U.S. military orbital platforms initially mistook the flashes for lightning strikes. What followed lasted 43 minutes. A firefight across 2.7 miles of open desert terrain. One eyewitness, a Border Patrol ranger stationed 11 miles north, described hearing constant automatic fire. "It sounded like Fallujah," he said. According to Vice News, the engagement involved approximately 40 Angels and over 200 cartel enforcers. The Angels used the terrain. Dune trails allowed them to flank the convoy from both north and west. They struck with semi-automatic rifles and improvised explosives. Audio analysis later confirmed they were using NATO hand signals and staggered firing formations. Military precision in a criminal theater. The cartel tried to fight back, but they were caught in the open. Exposed. Surrounded. Their superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't see their attackers in the dark. By dawn, drones flying overhead captured the aftermath. Burning trucks. Smoke columns stretching across the Sonoran horizon. Bodies scattered across the sand. But the Angels were gone. Vanished into the desert before authorities even arrived. The FBI's El Paso field office later confirmed at least 317 fatalities attributed to the clash. Most belonged to Sinaloa's Los Ninis division. Among the dead was Victor L. Pez Quintero, a mid-level lieutenant responsible for overseeing fentanyl logistics through Arizona. His death triggered chaos inside the cartel. Violent internal purges erupted in Mexico, with rival factions accusing each other of betrayal. The Bureau labeled it a multi-party transnational incident under investigation. They refused to name suspects. But locals knew. Farmers in Alta reported finding Harley tire marks near dry riverbeds. Residents in Lukeville claimed to hear motorcycles rumbling past at night, moving in silent formation with headlights turned off. The Intercept later reported that federal agencies were aware of the Angels' growing presence near the border. But they chose not to intervene. The reasoning remained unclear. But internal memos hinted that some officials considered the bikers a self-regulating force against cartel trafficking. It wasn't law enforcement keeping the Angels quiet. It was their own code. No talk. No surrender. No witnesses. Silence is sacred. Yet patterns emerged. On biker forums across the deep web, users posted encrypted memorials. Skull patches with 317 inscribed beneath flaming wings. A tribute to the men who fell that night. Or perhaps to the enemies who died. But silence can't hold forever. Not when hundreds of bodies tell a story the government refuses to acknowledge. When violence and denial collide, legends are born. The battle that would later be known as the Sonoran Purge began under the cover of false calm. From the Mexican side of the border, the night seemed ordinary. Just another shipment moving through the desert's endless black. But those who lived nearby swore they felt something in the air. A static tension. A low hum vibrating through the sand. It wasn't weather. It was war. Federal sensors from CBP's Tucson sector detected unusual heat signatures around Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, where the border fence cuts a jagged scar across the landscape. At 12:57 a.m., motion-triggered cameras caught a column of vehicles moving north. Lights dimmed. Tires dragging through sand to muffle noise. But it wasn't just the cartel convoy that drew attention. There was a parallel movement. traveling west of them. A smaller formation, barely visible, moving in near silence except for the occasional pulse of red brake lights. The Hells Angels. Satellite timestamps later confirmed both convoys entered the same square mile of desert within 4 minutes of each other. What happened next became legend. According to internal DHS communication logs obtained by the Washington Post, agents monitoring the feed initially mistook the Angels' formation for a Border Patrol tactical team. When the first flares went up, one operator radioed in, "Multiple heat contacts. Looks like law enforcement engaging smugglers." Minutes later, gunfire erupted. Accounts reconstructed by Mexican State Police described the Sinaloa convoy being ambushed from 2 directions, north and west. Attackers using suppressive fire patterns and improvised explosive devices planted under pre-marked stones. The Angels' attack was coordinated. Veterans who later analyzed the footage recognized the precision. Not random chaos. A military engagement with clear objectives. They struck at precisely 1:14 a.m. tracer rounds cutting the night open like lightning. The cartel convoy's front vehicle exploded first. A fuel truck hit by an improvised mortar round, built from a repurposed M203 grenade launcher. A cartel survivor, interviewed anonymously by El Universal, recalled seeing motorcycles cresting the dunes. Men in black tactical vests advancing, shouting nothing. No war cries. No orders. Just silence and gunfire. When the Angels moved, they moved in unison. Pairs covering pairs. Leapfrogging forward through the smoke. Witnesses reported they wore no visible patches. Only red bandanas tied to their rifles. At 1:25 a.m., the cartel's rear convoy attempted to retreat south. That's when Rex Mendes, leading the Angel strike team, allegedly ordered, "No survivors." The next 5 minutes turned into what a CBP insider later described to Vice as a desert slaughter. Over 40 vehicles were destroyed or disabled. Thermal imagery showed over 300 heat signatures go cold in under an hour. By the time U.S. drones repositioned, all visuals of the bikers had vanished. Not one motorcycle traceable by infrared. How did they disappear? Investigators discovered a network of dry riverbeds connecting directly to private ranch lands north of Ajo. Those trails, familiar only to locals, led straight into the Tejano Oatem Nation Reservation. An area so vast and politically sensitive that federal agents rarely entered without tribal escort. The Angels had chosen their ground perfectly. At dawn, as sunlight revealed what the night had hidden, smoke from burning trucks rose like black pillars. Bodies lay scattered across the sand. Weapons melted by fire. The desert reeked of oil, blood, and cordite. By 7:45 a.m., Mexican military units crossed the border to retrieve casualties. But the Americans had already sealed the area. The official explanation released to the press described it as a large-scale inter-cartel dispute. But the shell casings told another story. U.S.-issued NATO brass. Stamped from an Arizona National Guard armory batch stolen in 2022. Someone had access. Someone trained. Someone angry. In the following days, rumors erupted online. On biker forums and encrypted Telegram groups, members began posting fragments of information. Redacted coordinates. Heat map screenshots. Stylized photos of burned pickup trucks captioned simply, 317 Retribution. That quote from the Polish Hall survivor echoed across forums. Bikers comparing the two events. 1974 and 2024. Chapters of the same code. For the Angels, it wasn't about profit. It was retribution. They had lost brothers to fentanyl overdoses. Wives to addiction. Sons to street dope laced with the cartel's product. They saw the border not as a line between nations, but as the front line of a war they didn't start and no government would fight. A Department of Homeland Security leak published by ProPublica suggested the Angels had acted independently of federal coordination, but with strategic precision exceeding that of most paramilitary forces. The same report confirmed intelligence units identified 3 Angel safe houses in Arizona, Tucson, Nogales, Ajo, but none were raided. The reason? Silence from Washington. Behind closed doors, agents debated the unthinkable. Whether to confront the Angels and risk igniting a domestic insurgency, or to quietly let them serve as an unofficial deterrent against cartel incursions. The decision was silence. Across the border, the Sinaloa cartel prepared its response. Within 48 hours, gunmen raided a small ranch in Sonora, Mexico. 2 men believed to be U.S. nationals were executed. Days later, a Phoenix scrapyard was torched. Its owner, rumored to be an Angels affiliate, went missing. Cartel message boards circulated photos of burned motorcycles with captions in Spanish, "Para cada jefe una muerte." For every boss a death. But they underestimated the resolve of the Angels. According to The Guardian, within 2 weeks, 3 mid-level cartel commanders were found executed along Sonoran highways. Ogado, Burro, Moro. Each body bore the same mark carved into the chest. A flaming skull surrounded by angel wings. It wasn't art. It was a signature. Local Mexican authorities quietly admitted to journalists that these deaths appeared ritualized, implying involvement of a foreign group. But no evidence was ever released. Files were sealed. Inside biker culture, the Arizona battle became myth, told in whispers at bars and biker meets, disguised as rumor but rooted in truth. For the Angels who lived by 3 rules: no talk, no surrender, no witnesses, silence was the ultimate weapon. Still, evidence piled up. Satellite imagery leaked to journalists showed motorcycle tire marks leading north from the battlefield. Fuel receipts from Yuma and Gila Bend matched the same time frame. Eyewitnesses described convoys of black Harleys moving in formation through the desert. Headlights dark. Engines roaring like rolling thunder. Federal agents quietly traced encrypted Bitcoin transactions between known Angels members and darknet arms suppliers. Bellingcat later uncovered that the group had purchased over $2.1 million in weapons-grade munitions from ex-military brokers in Texas. What began as vengeance had become organization. What began as a brotherhood had become a militia. In biker culture, loyalty means more than law. When questioned by reporters, one former Angel speaking under anonymity said, "The government doesn't protect this country's borders anymore. We just did what men are supposed to do. Defend what's ours." That quote, later cited in Rolling Stone, captured the new philosophy that took hold after the Sonoran Purge. Self-enforced justice. But justice in the Angels' world always comes drenched in gasoline and gunpowder. By late April, more than 300 cartel operatives were confirmed dead. Not just from the firefight, but from follow-up assassinations across Mexico's northern states. The Mexican government publicly denied U.S. involvement. But intelligence leaks told another story. In a leaked Defense Intelligence report, analysts concluded that the attackers demonstrated combat discipline consistent with U.S. Special Operations training, suggesting that some Hells Angels veterans might have included former Marines and contractors. That conclusion would later prove correct when a cache of recovered weapons, AR-15 variants with customized serial numbers, was traced back to U.S. Marine surplus shipments diverted years prior. The FBI opened Operation Red Rain, an ongoing classified task force meant to investigate domestic paramilitary biker activity in border zones. Yet to this day, not one Angel has been arrested in connection with the battle. That clip, half a century old, echoes in chilling symmetry. The same adrenaline. The same silence after slaughter. Only this time, the battleground wasn't a hall in Cleveland. It was an international border. And the consequences were far greater. In the weeks that followed, satellite footage revealed temporary encampments deep in Arizona's wastelands. Clusters of vehicles arranged in circles. Tire burn marks in the shape of wings. The desert had become sacred ground. A monument to the Brotherhood's defiance. When journalists approached locals near Ajo and Yuma, they were met with closed doors and silence. One rancher told reporters from NBC News, "Nobody talks about that night. You didn't see it. You didn't hear it. You just keep your head down." The truth, buried in classified reports and burnt desert soil, remains the same. They fought the cartels in America's name. Even if America pretends it never asked them to. The desert was silent again. But it wasn't peace. It was aftermath. When the smoke cleared, there were no flags. No victory parades. Just wreckage. What had taken place in the Arizona wasteland that night was now spreading far beyond it. Through newsrooms, intelligence channels, biker forums, and morgues on both sides of the border. Authorities called it unverified cartel infighting. Reporters called it the Sonoran Massacre. But inside the Hells Angels, it was spoken of only once, in whispers, as the night the Brotherhood crossed the line. The U.S. Border Patrol maintained its silence. Satellite imagery was deleted. CBP drones that had captured the flashes of battle suddenly malfunctioned. The agency later told the Intercept that all video files from March 17 suffered technical corruption. But fragments leaked. One frame, still intact, showed a column of motorcycles fading into dawn. Their headlights streaking across the desert like ghosts retreating from daylight. Those who arrived later, Federal cleanup teams, forensic agents, local sheriffs, were told the same thing. Recover what's left. Then erase everything else. Evidence collection was followed by bulldozers. Dozens of trucks were buried in shallow sand trenches under environmental reclamation orders. And just like that, the dead disappeared. But you can't bury a story that big. Not in the digital age. Satellite analysts from Bellingcat identified 2.7 miles of burn scarring along Organ Pipe's northern sector, consistent with heavy vehicular explosions. Reuters cited over 300 confirmed cartel fatalities, though Mexican officials privately admitted the figure was closer to 400. In Sonora, families began arriving at morgues with missing posters for men who never came home. Some bodies had been retrieved. Others had vanished completely. Forensic teams couldn't determine cause of death for many remains because they'd been burned to ash. Mexican investigators suspected thermite, a military-grade incendiary compound, but could never confirm it publicly. A leaked CBP debrief, later published by ProPublica, described an unknown paramilitary group of motorcyclists operating independently with tactical precision. The memo noted, the attackers utilized NATO-style suppressive fire formations and demonstrated battlefield coordination atypical of gang violence. Every detail matched what witnesses had already described. The government just wouldn't name them. Across the border, the Sinaloa cartel was in chaos. Commanders were missing. Safe houses burned. And a civil war erupted between rival lieutenants blaming each other for the massacre. Internal chatter intercepted by DEA task forces revealed a paranoid belief that the Americans have unleashed mercenaries. One cartel enforcer told El Universal that the night felt like being hunted by ghosts. They didn't yell. They didn't talk. They just fired and disappeared. The cartel's own propaganda wing, Los Chapitos Media, released a video claiming foreign hitmen had attacked their men under the guidance of U.S. intelligence. But internally the truth circulated. The attackers rode motorcycles, wore black, and bore no insignia. Only one symbol was found spray-painted on an abandoned truck hood. A skull with wings. The cartel's response was swift. Within 2 weeks, suspected Angels affiliates across Tucson, Phoenix, and Yuma were targeted in drive-by shootings and arson attacks. Several were killed. Others simply vanished. A Phoenix scrapyard reportedly used for Harley repairs was found torched to its foundation. It didn't matter. Retaliation had only made the myth stronger. Meanwhile, inside the United States, the Federal Bureau of Investigation launched a classified probe under the code name Project Black Smoke. It was designed not to prosecute but to suppress. A leaked summary from a Newsweek exposé revealed the project's purpose: to neutralize public dissemination of vigilante border operations carried out by outlaw motorcycle organizations. Even within the FBI, not everyone agreed with the silence. One retired agent told reporters, "When devils fight other devils, we look the other way. If they're killing each other, that's fewer bodies for us to count." That indifference became policy. No arrests. No press conferences. No acknowledgement. The U.S. government quietly labeled the incident a transnational narcotics dispute, and left the public to guess what really happened. But the Hells Angels weren't guessing. They knew exactly what they had done. And to them it was justice. On April 9, 2024, hundreds of bikers gathered at an abandoned airstrip outside Tonopah, Nevada. The event wasn't public. But satellite imagery showed over 300 motorcycles arranged in a circle. Witnesses described bonfires, silence, and a ritual known among outlaw clubs as the burn. Each man tossed something into the flames: patches, photographs, spent shell casings, while reciting the creed, "Forever Forward." When dawn came, a new insignia appeared: a winged skull surrounded by barbed wire. Beneath it, the number 317, a tribute to the dead cartel bosses. On encrypted forums, members posted memorial graphics: skulls wrapped in flames, the number 317, and the phrase, "No talk, no witness." In Phoenix, an anonymous mural appeared under a highway overpass. The Hells Angels' winged deaths had painted above the words, "They crossed. We answered." Locals said it stayed up for only 24 hours before authorities painted over it. But by then the photo had gone viral. In June 2024, a second internal memo from the Department of Justice circulated through regional field offices. It warned, outlaw motorcycle organizations may be transitioning toward paramilitary functionality in border states. Privately, that memo was an admission. The Angels had done what years of federal funding and border operations could not. They halted cartel incursions. Not by law, but by fear. Agents on the ground even acknowledged it. One border official told NBC News, "We don't need to like them. We just need them to keep the bad guys out." The government would never say it publicly. But the strategy was clear. Tacit approval through silence. Across the desert towns of Ajo, Lukeville, and Yuma, that silence became sacred. Residents who'd once heard endless gunfire now heard none. The smuggling trails went empty. The border's chaos had gone quiet. But no one celebrated. A rancher interviewed by the Arizona Republic said, "When night falls, you hear the engines out there. Not loud. Just steady. It's how we know they're watching." Nobody asked who they were anymore. Everyone already knew. In the months that followed, other motorcycle clubs began copying the Angels' methods. The Outlaws MC started running patrol rides near El Paso. The Bandidos established checkpoints along Texas highways. The Mongols were rumored to have taken over smuggling checkpoints in California. The border was no longer federal. It was fraternal. The voice from half a century ago, a cop describing a scene of chaos, now felt prophetic. History hadn't repeated itself. It had evolved. By early 2025, the Sonoran Purge had turned into legend. Some say it was justice. Others say it was murder. The truth lies somewhere between. In the same place all wars do. Buried beneath silence and blood. The FBI still refuses to confirm or deny the Angels' involvement. The Mexican government claims the attackers were rogue mercenaries. The Angels, as always, say nothing. But in the desert, stories survive where bodies don't. Drivers still report seeing motorcycles trailing convoys near the border. Engines rumbling through the night without headlights. Hunters claim to find buried caches of ammunition where the battle once raged. And every now and then, when the wind shifts across the sand, it carries the faint sound of Harley engines echoing in the dark. A reminder that the border war never truly ended. The government can deny it. The cartels can rewrite it. But the desert remembers. Because for the Hells Angels, wars don't end. They wait. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime cases like this.